Good evening, y'all. I'm Paulus Norman and Antonio of the Paul and Nola channel, coming live to you from Cape Town, South Africa, and broadcasting across the world. Our topic this evening will be about the unlawful, so to speak, lawful expropriation or disowning of land of the farmers that is indeed on the tongues and lips of every South African. And it does not only happen in South Africa, but worldwide. No wonder that a friend of mine phoned me all the way from Canada, and he asked me, Paulus, do you know what is going on in your country? And my response or answer to him at the time was, I am fully aware of what's happening in South Africa, since I have a member of parliament who's keeping me up to date on each and every development in the country. Tonight I am having with me the Honourable Mr. Henry Lennit Max, an advocate in the High Court of South Africa, a prominent and serving member of the Democratic Alliance Party, the second largest party in South Africa, and he's currently serving in the Western Cape Provincial Legislature for the past 15 years. And I've approached him. God has divinely selected him to give his take on this move that the government wants to make insofar as land appropriation or disowning is concerned. Tonight it's not about me, but it's about folk, it's about the people of South Africa. So I would just like to know what is his truthful, objective and constructive take on this issue that might be impacting the lives of many South Africans. According to a research project that was actually performed by scientists and archaeologists from all over the world on 6,000 human skulls and the remains of human beings, they came to the conclusion that human life, modern human life, began in Southern Africa. Now my question to you, Mr. Max, is as follows. Would it be safe to say that the Khoi and the San were in actual fact the original inhabitants of Southern Africa, which include countries like Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and why?
Yes, Paulus, yes, it is so according to history, and it has been codified in the history of South Africa that the Khoisan was the first inhabitants of the land in South Africa and Africa. So yes, the other groups subsequently arrived, and obviously there were conflict, and as a result the Khoisan was a very small group.
Yes,
and not really, up to the fight against the bigger groups. But yes, according to our codification as well as our history, it's well documented that the Khoisan was the first inhabitants of Africa.
Thank you for your response on that, Mr. Max. My second question to you would be as follows. Would it then also be safe to say that the Nguni people, which exclusively refers and includes the Zulu, the Xhosa, and the Ndebele and Swazi, came all the way from the north and had migrated southward, where they had encroached or invaded on the lands of the Khoisan people, whom they found in these scattered parts of southern Africa?
Yes, that is according to history, and that is how we understand it.
Very well done. My next question to you, Mr. Max, or Advocate Max for that matter, would it also then be safe to say that bitter wars erupted amongst the Khoisan minority and these unprecedented or large groups of Nguni people, and then much later joined by the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British settlers, and the Boers.
It is actually what the history books actually tells us. And we were taught at school that that was indeed the case.
Well done. My next question to you, Mr. Max, is these people, or these groups were fighting one another, or were at war with one another for many ages, and to a certain extent to this day. Why were they fighting with one another?
You know, as today, you know, if you can take it as from what is currently happening, about the fears and expectations about you know, expropriation of land without compensation. That was in those days the issue. Property and livestock.
Oh, well done.
That is where actually, you know,
so they were actually
emanated
fighting
from.
over property,
Yes.
land and livestock.
And now the government of the day wants to restore the dignity of the people whose land were taken away from them.
My next question to you, Mr. Max, or Advocate Max, how do you describe or analyze the term land appropriation for the layman to understand the term as such?
Yes, in terms of the South African Constitution, Section 25 stipulates very clearly that land can be expropriated for two basic reasons. The one is for public interest, and the other one public purpose. And it can be expropriated in terms of expropriation with compensation, but the Act also allows the government to expropriate land without compensation. It means that in the case of land expropriation with compensation, there's a willing buyer and a willing seller, and then there's an agreement about the amount which is going to be paid, taking into consideration the value of the land, the use of the land, productivity of the land, and market price of the land. Those are things which the parties which is going to engage in this deal is going to look at, and then will be arriving at an acceptable amount of money to be paid for the land. On the other hand, if the legislation is very clear that if there's no such an agreement, nothing which is contained in this particular act will prohibit government to expropriate land, which means that government can expropriate land without compensation for the same reasons, and that is for public purpose and public interest. So as the Act stands, without any amendments, that government is empowered to restore land to from whom it was actually taken without compensation. That happened in the past, and if there was any compensation, it was very minimal. Then. So people were forced under the apartheid laws to be deprived and were deprived from their properties to places where they didn't intend to stay, and they didn't have a choice. Now, yes, this
are you referring to the forced removals?
The forced removals during the apartheid years, and now the time has arrived. Although we are 24 years already in a new democracy, there were attempts to restore land, but those were not successful. The laws are there, but the implementation thereof lacked seriously.
Mr. Max, just another question. Do you think that the government, you've mentioned it before, has a mandate to actually deprive or disown these farm owners from possessing land and give it back to the people to whom it justly belongs? Yes,
there's a moral mandate, and that is people's dignity who were affected during those forced removals and during apartheid needs to be restored. And
so you're referring to Section 25?
Yeah, and secondly, Section 25 is the legal mandate. The moral mandate is the one, and the legal mandate is the other one, and that is Section 25 of the South African Constitution. And that empowers government to restore land to the original owners of that particular land.
Based on the facts that you previously given.
Precisely.
Max. Mr. Max, my next question to you would be as follows. I vividly remember the stirring speech of the late and legendary former President Nelson Mandela on the 23rd of June 1998, whereby he said, and I'm going to quote it, that only a fair distribution of land to its former owners would guarantee peace as the country emerged from apartheid minority rule, and thus had they enacted the Restoration of Land Act of 1994. But even this act did not come to fruition because of certain issues. Could you just shed some more light on that?
Yes, it was a noble purpose and a noble intention. And as I indicated previously, is that although the act were there, the empowering act, section 25 of the Constitution were there. Government, yes, expropriate land in terms of that clause, but not enough so that you can say that sufficient, exercise were actually done to answer to the demand and the needs of the people, which still exists, and implementation. The red tape actually were actually fundamentally the inhibiting factor in achieving that particular goal. And yes, we do have a political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, which made it their duty now as a campaign issue to restore land and put then the necessary pressure on the governing party to do the same and to restore land to the people with a much quicker speed. And
you mean to expedite it?
To expedite that particular issue. However, recently a motion was accepted in our parliament that section 25 should be amended to meet those demands.
I heard about it.
Yeah, and but the governing party came up with an amendment to that particular proposal, which states that in so doing, it should not have a negative effect on investments and the economy of our country. So that is already in a softer approach. So in other words, there won't be land grabbing, which is maybe anticipated by the EFF. However, our President Cyril Ramaphosa is very clear on that particular issue, that the laws will be complied with. Because South Africa cannot be seen as a land which is lawlessness, which accommodate and is tolerant of actions which borders to criminal activity.
That's right.
If there's expropriation, it should be within the confines of existing laws of South Africa.
It's a very good response, and it's a very responsible move by the President. That brings me to my next question, Advocate Max. I would like to hear what is your take on this. Do you, for one moment, think that it would be fair to disown or expropriate land that is currently in the possession of these farmers? What do you think would the ripple effect be should the government be implementing such a system?
Yes, land expropriation will be accompanied by a lot of sweat and blood which actually went into the building
You mean the development?
of the development and the building of the economy, of that land to contribute to the economy. And land and property got a very wide, broad definition. It's not only farmland. It is property like my house now
Could be
tonight.
private property as well.
Precisely. So for instance, most of the farmers got bonds. They've got debt. Banks actually, gave them loans. And somebody has to pay for those outstanding, debt, which is there. As much as a house owner, most of the house owners got debt, got bonds, valid bonds. And all those things, those factors needs to be considered very carefully before you act in a manner which has been anticipated. But I don't think that we will get to a situation where banks will be hesitant to grant bonds for farming or even houses to be bought, because that is going to seriously hurt and cause harm to the South African economy. And it's for that particular reason that I'm very, very, very much convinced that the approach by the president, and if I am correct, if my memory serves me correct, I just read, I think Friday or the past weekend, in the newspapers, that the president already tasked one of the deputy ministers, Jeremy Kroner, to lead a task team which involved specialists on this particular issue to define the type of land which is going to be subjected to this particular approach. For example, land which has not been used by owners, land on foreign ownership, which has not been productively developed or used to continue, also to contribute to the economy, as well as state land. You understand? It's not only private land. State land is included here. So it might be farms, it might be for industrial purposes, and it might be for housing accommodation for the people. Because for the two purposes, public interest and public purpose, that is the overarching reason for land expropriation. But as the second largest party in South Africa, and of which I am a member of, the Democratic Alliance, we say, as the Constitution is actually stipulating, we believe land should be expropriated with compensation to award the owners for the effort and the investment they made over the years when they were in charge.
And in some cases over many years.
Precisely. In some instances, it came from one generation to another generation.
Exactly.
We understand that as well. That needs to be done. But on the other hand, you have to weigh up, also the need of the bigger community, the largest group of people, which were deprived of opportunities in the past to develop land. They were used as laborers,
Are you
but not as
referring to the
owners.
4% that was
Precisely.
And that brings us to our second last question. How do you think, if the government should actually execute or implement this move, how should they be doing this? Do you have a specific plan, or what do you think that they should be approaching each and every South African, the farm owners and whoever, consult with them and get a mandate from them to see how they will, at the end of the day, distribute land to those who are in need of land?
There will be commissions. The president of this country, Cyril Ramaphosa, indicated very clearly in his State of the Nation address, as well as his public statements in the media and on platforms where he acts, to address the fears of the current owners of property, and also the expectations of those who has an entitlement to land, that there will be broad consultation.
Very good.
Broad consultation, people
with all
role players, those who are owners of land, those institutions who act on their behalf, views of those who has an expectation of becoming landowners, which were although not they precisely or personally were deprived, but their forefathers and etc. was deprived and resulted in the situation where they find themselves at this particular point in time. So there will be broad consultation. That is not an overnight thing. It is something which will be discussed thoroughly, debated thoroughly, and I am not only hopeful, but I believe, fully believe. So far, the president showed himself as and proved himself as a reasonable person, a person who don't actually take decisions, impulsively, but a person who really thought through this process before he is starting or doing something or proposing something. And I believe that this process will be as painless as possible and will be in the benefit of all South Africa and South Africa as a whole, and that there's no reason for foreign countries to fear investment in South Africa. I think we can just become a better South Africa for all the people who live in it.
Yeah, that is what we would like to see at the end of the day. A fair and a democratic South Africa where each and every citizen's right will be taken into consideration. And this brings us to our very, very last question. Since you grew up on a farm, somewhere in the Western Cape, I'm sure that you are aware of the fact that most of the workers on these farms are highly dedicated and disciplined, but they are in need of one thing and one thing only. And what is that one thing that I'm referring at, in your opinion?
Come again with the question?
Now what I'm asking you, you will find that most of the farm workers on these farms are highly dedicated and they are well disciplined. They are at work each and every day, but you will find that most of them are uneducated. Your father has worked on a farm many years ago. What do you think can the government as well as those farm owners do to uplift those people currently on the farm?
Yes, yeah. It's not only my father was a farm worker. I mean, I was a farm worker. I grew up on farms, various farms where my father worked. And after school, because I left school very early, and I also worked on a farm, until the day I got other occupation. However, yes, most of the work done on the farms are done by farm workers. They know exactly what to do, when, and so forth. But the managerial side, because a farm or other property which contributes to the economy of South Africa should be managed properly. And I think that they lack training, because the history has told us that farms which were expropriated and given to a group of people, collapsed totally, because the people were not trained and they didn't have mentors who mentored them through the process, how to manage a farm like a business. And for this process to be successful, although farm workers are dedicated, hard-working, and they are the real labor on the farms, while the farm owners in many instances are the brains, and got the management skills, I think they should be trained properly, how to manage it. The work they know what to do, but how to manage it properly, and they need mentors to take them, over these years, take them by the hand and teach them how to manage a farm like a business and to be profitable, to benefit all of them.
Mr. Max, Advocate Max, at this point I would like to thank you from the bottom of my African heart for so candidly answering all my questions and my concerns that not only in South Africa, the people in South Africa are having, but right across the world. It was nice having you on the show, on our channel. Your comments and thumbs up will be appreciated out there. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Take care and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.